It all began on a quiet evening flight that seemed just like any other journey across the skies, filled with tired passengers, soft cabin lights, and the distant hum of the engines. Nobody on board expected that within just a few hours, the calm journey would turn into a life-or-death struggle that would test courage, humanity, and the strength of someone who was least expected to be the hero. Sheila Morgan, the elegant wife of one of the richest men in the country, was seated in the first-class section, her presence impossible to ignore. She was known for her grace, her charm, and her kindness, even though she lived in the world of wealth and privilege. Everyone assumed she had everything, a perfect life, endless luxuries, and nothing to worry about. Yet beneath her poised smile, Sheila carried silent struggles only she knew. That evening, as the flight glided through the dark clouds, something inside her shifted, something her wealth and beauty could not protect her from. At the very back of the plane, sitting quietly near the staff area, was a teenage janitor named Daniel. He was only 17, and he wasn't supposed to be a passenger at all. His job was simple, cleaning up after flights, making sure everything was neat before takeoff, and waiting for his next shift. But due to a sudden request from his manager, he had been asked to fly along and assist after landing, a chance he never expected. For Daniel, this was just another day at work, wearing his worn-out uniform, keeping his head low, invisible to the eyes of the wealthy travelers who barely noticed he existed. But fate had a plan that would soon change everything. As the plane soared higher, into the night sky, Sheila suddenly felt a sharp pain in her chest. At first, she brushed it off, adjusting her seatbelt, trying to breathe calmly. But within minutes, her face grew pale, her breath shallow, and her hands trembled uncontrollably. She whispered to the flight attendant near her, her voice weak, I don't feel right. And then, before anyone could understand what was happening, Sheila collapsed forward, unconscious. Gasps filled the cabin, passengers stood up, panic spread like fire. The flight attendants rushed, their training guiding them, but fear clouding their eyes. The pilot was informed immediately, his voice tense over the intercom, asking if there was a doctor on board. Silence. No one responded, not a single hand was raised. For the first time, the glamorous first-class section was frozen in helplessness. Daniel, from the back, heard the cries, the chaos, and something inside him pulled him forward. He wasn't a doctor, he wasn't even trained for emergencies like this, but he had seen his mother collapse once when he was younger. He remembered the night he had saved her, following the desperate instructions of a doctor over the phone, pushing against her chest, crying, begging her to breathe. That night had carved a memory into his heart that he could never forget. Without thinking of his place or status, Daniel pushed through the aisle. "Let me try," he called out, his voice shaking but determined. The passengers looked at him with doubt. A janitor, a boy, could he possibly do anything when professionals had failed? But time was running out, and Sheila's pulse was fading. The flight attendant hesitated, then stepped aside. Daniel knelt beside Sheila, his trembling hands reaching for her wrist, trying to feel for life. "Please, ma'am, stay with me," he whispered. And then, remembering every detail of what he had once done for his mother, Daniel pressed his hands against Sheila's chest, beginning compressions. His rhythm was uneven at first, his arms weak, but he focused, counting silently, tears forming in his eyes, as he begged her to come back. "Breathe, please breathe," he pleaded. The passengers watched in stunned silence. Some prayed, some cried, some doubted. Yet Daniel did not stop. Minutes felt like hours. The plane seemed colder, quieter, the only sound, the desperate thumps of Daniel's hands against Sheila's chest, and his broken voice urging her to fight. And then, just as hope began to fade, Sheila gasped. A sharp, sudden breath broke the silence. Her eyelids fluttered, her chest rose faintly. The cabin erupted in relief. Tears rolled down cheeks. Strangers hugged each other. And Daniel, exhausted, collapsed backward, his face wet with tears, but his heart full of relief. The attendants rushed to stabilize Sheila, giving her oxygen, monitoring her every breath. The pilot announced an emergency landing, and within half an hour, the plane touched down where medics were waiting. Sheila was rushed to the hospital, and Daniel quietly sat aside, unnoticed again, his hands still shaking, his heart pounding. He didn't do it for recognition. He did it because in that moment, humanity was bigger than wealth, titles, or age. When Sheila regained full consciousness later that night in the hospital, her first question was not about her condition, not about the doctors, but about the boy who saved her. "Where is he?" she whispered. "The young boy. He saved me." The airline staff brought Daniel to her room. He stood nervously at the doorway, still in his janitor's uniform, unsure if he even belonged there. But when Sheila saw him, her eyes filled with tears. She reached out a trembling hand and whispered, "You didn't just save my life, you saved my faith in people." Her husband, the billionaire, entered soon after, his usual cold and businesslike demeanor broken with gratitude. He placed his hand firmly on Daniel's shoulder and said, "You've done something money could never buy. You gave me back my wife. And I will never forget this." From that day, Daniel's life would never be the same. He was no longer invisible, no longer just a boy in a janitor's uniform. His courage, his heart, and his refusal to let fear stop him had rewritten his destiny. And for Sheila, every breath she took afterward was a reminder that sometimes, in the most unexpected places, in the most ordinary people, lies the power to change everything. Because heroes are not always the ones with wealth, power, or status. Sometimes, they are just 17-year-old boys who refuse to give up when hope seems lost. And as the world learned about this story, millions were reminded that courage comes from the heart, and compassion can turn even the darkest moment into a miracle. So, if this story touched your heart today, don't forget to stay with us for more stories of hope, courage, and humanity. Please, subscribe to the channel, because every story we share is a reminder that kindness can change the world.